People ask me why the Amish live longer. I always say the same thing, and I'm always lying. I spent almost half my life in a place with no technology, no internet, no television, no retirement plan to fall back on after working years. Almost every man in that community lived to around 89. The average American man, well, he goes before 76, or falls apart right around that age. That's nearly 13 years. Nobody asks why. They just keep taking vitamins, whatever somebody told them to take. My name is Elias. I'm 94 years old. I spent nearly half my life cut off from technology and the usual noise of modern society. And the first thing I noticed about your world, the very first thing, was that everyone looked tired. Not sick, not sad, just tired. And almost nobody seemed to think that was strange. I'm going to tell you what the Amish have that you don't, but you have to stay with me on this, because what I'm about to say is going to make you uncomfortable. Not because it's complicated, because it's simple, and I think you already know it. I know you want to know what the difference is. Fine. We woke up before sunrise and worked with our own hands until the light was gone. No processed food, no sugar wrapped in plastic. We ate what we grew with our own labor. No boxes, no shortcuts. Write it down if you want. Every word of it is real. But I drove a tractor next to a man named Daniel for almost 22 years. Daniel and I weren't all that different. We ate the same things, woke up the same hour, went to bed the same hour. And yet here I am, 94 years old, sitting here telling you his story, because Daniel went at 67. So don't tell me it was the food. A lot of people have argued with me about this over the years. Doctors mostly, young, sharp guys with clean offices and confident voices. About 3 years ago, one of them sat across from me and told me, straight-faced, almost surprised, that my numbers were remarkable for my age. Then he spent 15 minutes explaining why. Physical labor, genetics, diet. He had an answer for everything. Before I got up to leave, I asked him one thing. When's the last time you sat with somebody for 4 hours and didn't say anything important? He looked at me like I'd spoken another language. That man had every number right. I still wonder about him sometimes. Daniel had a brother. They hadn't spoken in 19 years, over a land dispute, 14 acres. That's what 19 years of silence cost him. Every spring when we'd go out to plow that field, his jaw was set tight, like he was chewing on something that just wouldn't go down. One time I asked him, just once, I said, Daniel, you still thinking about that land? He looked out at the field for a long moment. Then he said just 3 words, every single day. He went on a Wednesday morning in October. His heart gave out. The doctors said it was his heart. I know what it was. It was 19 years of a conversation he never had. Maybe that's not a medical diagnosis, but I've watched enough people leave this world with their stories unfinished to know the difference between a body that wore out and a body that gave up. What I saw with Daniel, that was a body that gave up, not wore out. I went to his brother right after the service, said just one sentence. Daniel's gone. The brother stood there at his door for a long time without saying a word. Then he said, I was going to call him this spring. That's it, this spring. 19 years, 14 acres, and a phone call that was going to happen this spring. I drove home and just sat in the kitchen. I didn't even make coffee, just sat. Some things don't need a response. They just need to be felt all the way through. Here's what nobody writes about when they write about the Amish. We didn't just share meals. We built each other's barns. If somebody's roof collapsed in the winter, 30 men showed up the next morning. No call, no text, no organizing needed. They just came, because that's what you did. Because next winter, it might be your roof. Can you imagine what that does to a man's nervous system? To know, not hope, not believe, to know that if everything fell apart tomorrow morning, 30 men would be standing in your yard by sunrise. Your world calls that a support system. We just call it Tuesday. I left all of that at 43. I thought I was gaining independence. What I was actually doing was trading the most valuable thing I had for a television set and a mortgage I carried alone. The loneliness didn't hit right away. It came in slow, like cold air finding its way into a poorly insulated house. You don't notice it until you're already shivering. By 58, I was eating well, exercising, doing everything right, and I was living through one of the loneliest stretches of my life. Sitting in a house with central heat, plenty of food in the fridge, and a kind of loneliness I had never once felt inside the community. There is a kind of loneliness that clean eating cannot touch. Let me say that again. There is a kind of loneliness that clean eating cannot touch. Now let me ask you something. If everything collapsed tomorrow, if you really needed someone, how many people would actually show up? Not text, not hit a reaction button. Show up, stand in your yard, get their hands dirty, take your time, count them. If that number is under 5, you are living with a chronic condition that no vitamin has ever cured. Your body knows it, even when your mind keeps itself busy pretending otherwise. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because nobody said it to me until it was almost too late. My daughter held that mirror up to me at 71, and even then, I almost looked away. That's the thing about a truth you already know. It doesn't surprise you, it just wears you out. Because now you have to do something about it. The Amish don't live long because of the food or the labor or the screens they don't have. They live long because no man in that community ever has to wonder if he matters. He sees it. Every barn raising, every harvest, every Tuesday morning when a neighbor shows up without being called. You can eat perfectly and still go from being forgotten. I've watched it happen, more times than I can count. I'm not telling you to leave your life. I left mine and it cost me more than I expected. What I'm telling you is this. After I left at 43, I spent the next 20 years building something that looked successful from the outside. A house, a business, a car I didn't need. And somewhere inside those 20 years, I stopped being known by anyone. Not famous, known. There's a distance between those two words that most people never measure. Back in the community, my neighbor Ruth knew I took my coffee without sugar. She knew my left knee ached in cold weather. She knew that when something was wrong, I'd go quiet. She knew all of that without being told. And that kind of being known, it does something to a person, to your body, not just your mind. It says, you're seen. You're here. You belong to something. I traded that for independence. Then, I think I was around 71, eating alone in the kitchen when my daughter called. She said, "Dad, I don't think you have any real friends." She wasn't being cruel. She was right. I had acquaintances, business contacts, but nobody who would just show up. I didn't argue with her. I carried it around for 3 days. Then I drove 40 minutes to see a man named Carl, someone I hadn't called in 6 years. We sat on his porch for 4 hours. Didn't solve anything, just sat. And I think even that did something for me. I went back the next month, and the month after. Carl went 2 years later. But during those 2 years, I had someone who knew my name the way Ruth used to know it. And I believe that bought me years I wouldn't have had otherwise. There's something about Carl I never told anyone. In 2 years, he never once asked me how I was doing. Not once. He'd just hand me a coffee and sit down. And honestly, that was one of the most genuine things anyone had done for me in a long, long time. He wasn't performing friendship. He was just there. A lot of people perform. Carl just came, sat, and went home. Like he was saying, "I'm here." I didn't realize how much I needed that until he was gone. My father went at 88 inside the community. My uncle at 91. My grandfather at 86.